Hi, I'm MC Jessie. 大家好，讀你聽2.0，今日繼續讀 Miguel de Cervantes 嘅 Don Quixote， 我哋讀到第48節，呢一節叫做 In which the canon pursues the subject of the books of chivalry, with other matters worthy of its weight。 上一回咧就講 Don Quixote 就有啲質疑啦，點解佢要被運上牛車，有啲咁嘅對待，佢主要係針對個牛車呢樣嘢就送佢翻去見嘅情人係冇問題嘅，但係點解係牛車咧？即係個對待好似唔係幾，對於遊俠嚟講有啲唔尊重啊，有啲唔符合啦。咁然之後咧，有幾位牧師啦，佢咁講啦 ，canon 啊，喺路上就遇見，咁咧就上前嚟就問點解要困住 Don Quixote 啊？咁於是乎咧 ，Curate 咧就嘗試去解釋，咁但係咧就俾 Central 咧就篤穿咗，就係話佢哋根本就唔係咩法師或者巫師，佢哋只不過咧就係髮型師同埋一啲牧師，即係佢哋自己都係就喬裝假扮咧就呃 Don Quixote。咁咧於是乎咧兩邊嘅牧師咧就行埋咗一邊，就去討論呢件事，商議呢件事，主要咧就係討論遊俠啊，呢個所謂遊俠世界啊，遊俠精神啊，佢所表現出嚟嘅唔真實，佢嘅虛幻，佢嘅假言係值得狠狠批評嘅。但係同一時間咧，就不禁會令人諗到喺小說世界的確係需要存在一啲幻想、一啲浪漫主義，咁先至有呢個娛樂城喎。咁如果唔係，所有嘢咪變咗枯燥乏味咯。咁呢個係一個好深切，亦都非常之精彩嘅一個辯論，一個思辨嚟嘅。我哋睇下呢一節咧，會唔會有啲再深入啲嘅討論啦？定係會繼續推進呢個故事？跟住我哋交俾 Costa 同大家讀嚟聽。
It is as you say, Signor Canon, said the curate, and for that reason those who have hitherto written books of the sort deserve all the more censure for writing without paying any attention to good taste or the rules of art, by which they might guide themselves and become as famous in prose as the two princes of Greek and Latin poetry are in verse. I myself, at any rate, said the canon, was once tempted to write a book of chivalry in which all the points I have mentioned were to be absurd, and if I must own the truth, I have more than 100 sheets written, and to try if it came up to my own opinion of it, I showed them to persons who were fond of this kind of reading, to learned and intelligent men, as well as to ignorant people who cared for nothing but the pleasure of listening to nonsense, and from all I obtained flattering approval. Nevertheless, I proceeded no farther with it, as well because it seemed to me an occupation inconsistent with my profession, as because I perceive that the fools are more numerous than the wise, and though it is better to be praised by the wise few than applauded by the foolish many, I have no mind to submit myself to the stupid judgment of the silly public, to whom the reading of such books falls for the most part. But what most of all made me hold my hand and even abandon all idea of finishing it was an argument I put to myself taken from the plays that are acted nowadays, which was in this wise. If those that are now in vogue, as well those that are pure invention as those founded on history, are, all of most of them, downright nonsense and things that have neither head nor tail, and yet the public listens to them with delight, and regards or cries them up as perfection when they are so far from it. And if the authors who write them, and the players who act them, say that this is what they must be, for the public wants this and will have nothing else, and that those that go by rule and work out a plot according to the laws of art will only find some half-dozen intelligent people to understand them, while all the rest remain blind to the merit of their composition, and that for themselves it is better to get bread from the many than praise from the few, then my book will fare the same way. After I have burnt off my eyebrows in trying to observe the principles I have spoken of, and I shall be the tailor of the corner, and though I have sometimes endeavoured to convince actors that they are mistaken in this notion they have adopted, and that they would attract more people and get more credit by producing plays in accordance with the rules of art than by absurd ones, they are thoroughly wedded to their own opinion that no argument or evidence can wean them from it. I remember saying one day to one of these obstinate fellows, "Tell me, Do you not recollect that a few years ago there were 3 tragedies acted in Spain, written by a famous poet of these kingdoms, which were such that they filled all who heard them with admiration, delight, and interest, the ignorant as well as the wise, the masses as well as the higher orders, and brought in more money to the performers, these 3 alone, than 30 of the best that have been since produced? No doubt, replied the actor in question. You mean the Isabella, the Phyllis, and Alexandra. Those are the ones I mean, said I, and see if they did not observe the principles of art, and if, by observing them, they failed to show their superiority and please all the world, so that the fault does not lie with the public that insists upon nonsense, but with those who don't know how to produce something else. The ingratitude revenged was not nonsense, nor was there any in the Numantia, nor any to be found in the merchant lover, nor yet in the friendly fair foe, nor in some others that have been written by certain gifted poets, to their own fame and renown, and to the profit of those that brought them out. Some further remarks I added to these, with which, I think, I left them rather dumbfounded, but not so satisfied or convinced that I could disabuse him of his error. You have touched upon a subject, Signor Canon, observed the curate here, that has awakened an old enmity I have against the plays in vogue at the present day, quite as strong as that which I bear to the books of chivalry. For while the drama, according to Tully, should be the mirror of human life, the model of manners, and the image of truth, those which are presented nowadays are mirrors of nonsense, models of folly, and images of lewdness. For what greater nonsense can there be in connection with what we are now discussing than that of an infant to appear in swaddling clothes in the first scene of the first act, in the second a grown-up bearded man? Or what greater absurdity can there be than putting before us an old man as a swashbuckler, a young man as a poltroon, a lackey using fine language, a page giving sage advice, a king plying as porter, a princess who is a kitchen maid? And then what shall I say of their attention to the time in which the action they represent may or can take place, save that I have seen a play where the first act began in Europe, the second in Asia, the third finished in Africa, and no doubt, had it been in 4 acts, the fourth would have ended in America, and so it would have been laid in all 4 quarters of the globe? And if truth to life is the main thing the drama should keep in view, how is it possible for any average understanding to be satisfied when the action is supposed to pass in the time of King Pepin or Charlemagne, and the principal personage in it they represent to be the Emperor Heraclius, who entered Jerusalem with a cross and won the Holy Sepulchre, like Godfrey of Boulogne, there being years innumerable between the one and the other? Or if the play is based on fiction and historical facts are introduced, or bits of what occurred to different people and at different times mixed up with it, or not only without any semblance of probability, but with obvious errors that from every point of view are inexcusable. And the worst of it is that there are ignorant people who say that this is perfection, and that anything beyond this is affected refinement. And then if we turn to sacred dramas, what miracles they invent in them? On the apocryphal, ill-advised instance, attributing to one saint the miracles of another. And even in secular plays, they venture to introduce miracles without any reason or object except that they think some such miracle, or transformation as they call it, will come in well to astonish stupid people and draw them to the play. All this tends to the prejudice of the truth and corruption of history, nay more, to the reproach of the wits of Spain. For foreigners who scrupulously observe the laws of the drama look upon us as barbarous and ignorant when they see the absurdity and nonsense of the plays we produce. Nor would it be a sufficient excuse to say that the chief object well-ordered governments have a view when they permit plays to be performed in public as to entertain the people with some harmless amusement occasionally, and keep it from those evil humors which idleness is apt to engender, and that, as this may be attained by any sort of play, good or bad, there is no need to lay down laws, or bind those who write or act them to make them as they ought to be made, since, as I say, the object sought for may be secured by any sort. To this I would reply that the same end would be, beyond all comparison, better attained by means of good plays than by those that are not so. For after listening to an artistic and properly constructed play, the hero will come away enlivened by the jests, instructed by the serious parts, full of admiration at the incidents, his wits sharpened by the arguments, warned by the tricks, all the wiser for the examples, inflamed against vice and in love with virtue. For in all these ways a good play will stimulate the mind of the hearer, be he ever so boorish or dull. And of all impossibilities, the greatest is that a play endowed with all these qualities will not entertain, satisfy, and please much more than one wanting in them, like the greater number of those which are commonly acted nowadays. Nor are the poets who write them to be blamed for this. For some there are among them who are perfectly well aware of their faults, and know what they ought to do. But as plays have become a sellable commodity, they say, and with truth, that the actors will not buy them unless they are after this fashion, and so the poet tries to adapt himself to the requirements of the actor who is to pay him for his work. And that this is the truth may be seen by the countless plays that a most fertile wit of these kingdoms has written, with so much brilliancy, so much grace and gaiety, such polished versification, such choice language, such profound reflections, and in a word, so rich in eloquence and elevation of style, that he has filled the world with his fame. And yet, in consequence of his desire to suit the taste of the actors, they have not all, as some of them have, come as near perfection as they ought. Others write plays with such heedlessness that, after they have been acted, the actors have to fly and abscond, afraid of being punished, as they often have been, for having acted something offensive to some king or other, or insulting to some noble family. All which evils, and many more that I say nothing of, would be removed if there were some intelligent and sensible person in the capital to examine all plays before they were acted, not only those produced in the capital itself, but all that were intended to be acted in Spain, without whose approval, seal, and signature the local magistracy should allow any play to be acted. In that case, actors would take care to send their plays to the capital, and could act them in safety, and those who write them would be more careful and take more pains with their work, standing in awe of having to submit it to the strict examination of one who understood the matter, and so good plays would be produced and the objects they aim at happily attained, as well the amusement of the people, as the credit of the wits of Spain, the interest and safety of the actors, and the saving of trouble in inflicting punishment on them. And if the same or some other person were authorized to examine the newly written books of chivalry, no doubt some would appear with all the perfections you have described, enriching our language with the gracious and precious treasure of eloquence, and driving the old books into obscurity before the light of the new ones that would come out for the harmless entertainment, not merely of the idle but of the very busiest. For the bow cannot be always bent, nor can weak human nature exist without some lawful amusement. The canon and the curate had proceeded thus far with their conversation, when a barber, coming forward, joined them, and said to the curate, "This is the spot, Signor Licentiate, that I said was a good one for fresh and plentiful pasture for the oxen, while we take our noontide rest." "And so it seems," returned the curate, and he told the canon what he proposed to do, on which he too made up his mind to hold with them, attracted by the aspect of the fair valley that lay before their eyes, and to enjoy it as well as the conversation of the curate, to whom he had begun to take a fancy, and also to learn more particulars about the doings of Don Quixote. He desired some of his servants to go on to the inn, which was not far distant, and fetch from it what eatables there might be for the whole party, as he meant to rest for the afternoon where he was. To which one of his servants replied that the sumpter mule, which by this time ought to have reached the inn, carried provisions enough to make it unnecessary to get anything from the inn except barley. "In that case," said the canon, "take all the beasts there, and bring the sumpter mule back." While this was going on, Sancho, perceiving that he could speak to his master without having the curate and the barber, of whom he had his suspicions, present all the time, approached the cage in which Don Quixote was placed, and said, "Signor, to ease my conscience, I want to tell you the state of the case as to your enchantment, and that is that these two here, with their faces covered, are the curate of our village and the barber, and I suspect they have hit upon this plan of carrying you off in this fashion out of pure envy, because your worship surpasses them in doing famous deeds. And if this be the truth, it follows that you are not enchanted, but hoodwinked and made a fool of. And to prove this, I want to ask you one thing, and if you answer me as I believe you will answer, you will be able to lay your finger on the trick, and you will see that you are not enchanted, but gone wrong in your wits." "Ask what thou wilt, Sancho my son," returned Don Quixote, "for I will satisfy thee and answer all thou requirest. As to what thou sayest, that these who accompany us yonder are the curate and the barber, our neighbors and acquaintances, it is very possible that they may seem to be those same persons, but that they are so in reality and in fact. Believe it not on any account, What thou art to believe and think is that if they look like them, as thou sayest, it must be that those who have enchanted me have taken the shape and likeness. For it is easy for enchanters to take any form they please, and they may have taken those of our friends in order to make thee think as thou dost, and lead thee into a labyrinth of fancies from which thou wilt find no escape, though thou hast the cord of Theseus. And they may also have done it to make me uncertain in my mind, and unable to conjecture whence this evil comes to me. For if on the one hand thou dost tell me that the barber and the curate of our village are here in company with us, and on the other I find myself shut up in a cage, and know in my heart that no power on earth that was not supernatural would have been able to shut me in, what wouldst thou have me say or think, but that my enchantment is of a sort that transcends all I have ever read of in all the histories that deal with knights errant that have been enchanted, so thou mayest set thy mind at rest as to the idea that they are what thou sayest, for they are as much so as I am a Turk. But touching thy desire to ask me something, say on, I will answer thee, though thou should ask questions from this till tomorrow morning. May Our Lady be good to me, said Sancho, lifting up his voice. And is it possible that your worship is so thick of skull and so short of brains that you cannot see that what I say is the simple truth, and that malice has more to do with your imprisonment and misfortune than enchantment? But as it is so, I will prove plainly to you that you are not enchanted. Now tell me, so may God deliver you from this affliction, and so may you find yourself when you least expect it in the arms of my lady Dulcinea. Leave off conjuring me, said Don Quixote, and ask what thou wouldst know. I have already told thee I will answer with all possible precision. That is what I want, said Sancho, and what I would know. And have you tell me, without adding or leaving out anything, but telling the whole truth as one expects it to be told, and as it is told by all who profess arms, as your worship professes them, under the title of knights errant. I tell thee I will not lie in any particular, said Don Quixote. Finish thy question. For in truth thou weariest me with all these asseverations, requirements, and precautions, Sancho. Well, I rely on the goodness and truth of my master, said Sancho, and so, because it bears upon what we are talking about, I would ask, speaking with all reverence, whether since your worship has been shut up and, as you think, enchanted in this cage, you have felt any desire or inclination to go anywhere, as the saying is. I do not understand going anywhere, said Don Quixote. Explain thyself more clearly, Sancho, if thou wouldst have me give an answer to the point. Is it possible, said Sancho, that your worship does not understand going anywhere? Why, the schoolboys know that from the time they were babies. Well then, you must know, I mean, have you had any desire to do what cannot be avoided? Ah, now I understand thee, Sancho, said Don Quixote. Yes, often, and even this minute. Get me out of this strait, or all will not go right.
唔該晒 Costa， 好，呢一節就讀到嚟呢度啦。好高興啦，佢繼續有呢個思辨嘅內容啊。呢個牧師咧，佢就有提到佢自己都有想出書講關於遊俠嘅書，咁但係咧佢最後係冇出版到嘅，因為佢認為咧好嘅作品、有質素嘅作品咧係唔賣嘅，只係啲底俗嘅先至賣嘅，因為大部分人咧都係傻嘅。咁呢個咧，似乎係作者借佢把口咧，就講埋呢個市場學啦，非常之打破第四道牆噶啦。咁然之後咧，亦都有講呢一啲劇作啦，點解佢哋可以成為偉大嘅劇作啦？佢哋比較西班牙呢個地方，因為嗰個人嘅質素問題，就會俾外界即係外國啦去批評啊，咁多數係法國啦。去批評佢哋，即係侮辱咗一啲劇作啦，因為呢個作品同埋嗰個國民水平其實係相互影響。咁然之後就會話一啲好嘅作品咧，除咗提升到個觀眾質素啦、道德價值觀之外啦、智慧之外咧，仲話咧有關嘅執權者啊，係咪應該去立法管制呢個文學咧？因為佢唔想睇住呢個國民水平咧一路咁樣停滯不前，一路敗壞啊！與此同時咧，佢哋都行到一個位咧，係需要去休息啦，去歇一歇。咁呢個時候咧 ，Sancho 咧就把握時間走去同 Don Quixote 講，就係話：喂，其實你知唔知道韞住你嘅人就係髮型師同埋我哋條村嘅牧師，佢哋只不過咧係妒忌你。妒忌你咧可以做大事，所以就俾你繼續去進行呢個遊俠生活。咁但係當Quixote其實係唔理佢嘅，即係佢話你只不過係俾你啲巫術 所蒙蔽，咁Sancho咧就急啦，然之後咧就同Don Quixote講，咁其實你諗下，你想唔想去廁所先？順應大自然呼喚之，呢係人最簡單嘅要求嚟嘅，你想唔想去啊？咁Don Quixote就話，哇，既然你咁講，咁我都想出去嘅。咁咧就帶動咗呢個故事咧繼續發展落去，就係Don Quixote咧要突破籠牢啦。我哋睇下呢一段有啲咩生字先。Disabuse 呢個文中比較前段出現嘅 disabuse 動詞嚟嘅 persuade someone that an idea or belief is mistaken disabuse apocryphal 呢個字比較少見 apocryphal 形容詞嚟嘅，通常形容一個故事啊或者啲發言啊，形容故事 of a story or statement of doubtful authenticity although widely circulated as being true， 即係咧佢表面上好似係有權威、好有可信嘅，實際上咧佢係都讚嘅，所以呢個字係比較多重嘅意義喺度。Apocryphal， 俾多個比較少見嘅 Asseveration Asseveration 名詞嚟嘅 The solemn or emphatic declaration or statement of something 嚴正聲明啊。咁Don Quixote咧最尾咧就同Sancho講啦，佢話你呢啲咁嘅 asseveration 啊啲嘢我真係聽到好嚴啊，你究竟想點啊？想講咩啊？好，我哋今日嚟到呢一度，下一次再同大家讀你聽，拜拜。
If you like this video, make sure to comment, like, share and subscribe to Costa. See you next Friday.